Hello, Darkness here. The following is a video about a girl named Amber, who was murdered in 2010, and it looks like her murder was linked to other murders of women in the area. I came across this story while working on my episode 11 of Roy DeMeo, and wanted to make a video about Amber because she deserves justice. Her killer has not been found. The voice of the killer was heard. She called her brother, and he was in prison, but they tape record everything. Now, I know nowhere near as much about this case as I do, say, Roy DeMeo, or Richard Kuklinski, or Jim Jones, but it should all be accurate. If you're Canadian, and especially from Alberta, I'd like you to listen to the voice, see if you recognize it or memorize it, in case you ever encounter this guy. I believe he's murdered again or will murder again. This is only one episode, 30 minutes long, so now let's roll the opening credits and begin. Amber Alyssa Tuccaro was born on January 3rd, 1990. She was 20 years old when this story took place. Some internet sources say 21, but they suck at math because she went missing on August 17, 2010. Amber was adopted by another Indigenous woman, Vivian, whom also is called Tootsie, Tuccaro. And Tootsie raised Amber as if she were her own. She loved Amber. She had 4 other kids, but they were all boys. She wanted a girl too. She was just very close to Amber. Now, I don't know much about the father, but I believe he was a parental figure in the house too, and a good dad. Amber was smart and strong-willed, wasn't afraid to do what she wanted no matter what anybody had to say about it. So in other words, she was tough. And she had to be tough, because my understanding is she grew up in some difficult circumstances. She was poor, and at the time she was living in a domestic abuse shelter. She was a member of the Mitsu Cree First Nation, I hope I'm not butchering that, and she was living in the Canadian city Fort McMurray, and became good friends with Evangeline, who was a girl living in the shelter with her. Now, recently Amber had gotten pregnant. She had an infant son named Jake, who she was raising. It was stressful. She was only 20 years old during the late summer of 2010, and Amber decided she needed a vacation. She was young to have all this responsibility. But since she couldn't leave Jacob alone, she decided she'd take her son with her. Her friend Evangeline would go too, and that would help them share responsibility as well and make the vacation easier. So they decided to fly to Edmonton. With almost 1.5 million people, there was a lot more to do there. Edmonton was a pretty happening place, still is, probably much more than they were used to seeing at Fort McMurray. After flying to that region, before they stopped into Edmonton, the city, They stayed in a small hotel, which was located in an industrial park on a hamlet, Nisku. Nisku Motel was the name of it. It wasn't particularly original. The girls were going to stay the night and then head over to Edmonton the next day. It was a one-night trip. Her mom didn't want her to go. She was a little worried, but Amber was going to do what she wanted, and who can blame her? She's young. She wants to enjoy her life. As the August evening crept in, Amber felt a tug of excitement. She just couldn't wait to get to Edmonton. She was coming from the banality of a shelter and wanted adventure and fun. Her friend was going to stay at the hotel, and since they had the baby with them, the friend decided she would watch the boy while Amber hitchhiked to Edmonton. Hitchhiking is common again in her culture, which is poor, and many of them not owning cars, and they live in territories with huge swaths of land between the destinations. Canada needs to look into some kind of public transport, like some kind of busing for people who live in those areas who are poor, especially the indigenous people. So, Amber needed to hitchhike north and began walking along the road until around 8 p.m. As shadows were preying on the last light, a stranger pulled over and offered to let her hop in, telling her he'd take her to Edmonton, which was north. That stranger was the last person who'd ever see her alive. Now I'm going to play a disturbing clip for you. In it, you're going to hear her argue with the serial killer. She turned on her phone and called her brother secretly at the time so it would record things. She was smart and clever. Now, listen to this clip. Highly disturbing, but if you're Canadian, particularly from this region, or haven't heard this case, I'd like you to listen carefully to this man's voice and try to memorize it to the best of your ability. You're listening to her killer, who has also probably murdered at least 4 other women, and will probably kill again, if he's not stopped. This piece of shit needs to be brought to justice.
Where are we by?
We're just heading south of Beaumont, or north of Beaumont.
We're heading north to Beaumont. Yo, where are we going?
Just
No, this is a... Are you fucking kidding me? You better not take me anywhere I don't want to go. I want to go into the city. Jeez. Yo, we're not going into the city, are we?
We're going.
No, we're not.
Yes.
Then what are these roads going to?
50th Street.
50th Street. Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Yo, where are we going?
50th Street.
50th Street?
50th Street.
East, right?
East.
Over town.
Bravo.
He might have pulled over at that moment, and during a struggle, he probably beat and choked her to death. That's what seems the most likely scenario, unless he had a weapon with him. Because her remains were found 2 years later, not far from the motel, and near where other women were discovered, it seems like this remote location is at least one location where he uses it to dispose of the victims. Unless there are other serial killers out there, which seems unlikely, but is possible since it's remote. It's just not very likely. Now I'm going to play the clip again, just his voice, to make it easier to memorize. And you're going to see the full public message at the end of the video after the credits, if you want to hear it again.
We're just heading south of Beaumont, or north of Beaumont. We're going. Yes, to 50th Street. Absolutely. 50th Street. 50th Street. East. We're just heading south of Beaumont, or north of Beaumont. We're going. Yes, to 50th Street. Absolutely. 50th Street. 50th Street. East.
Leduc County is a municipal district in Alberta. It runs 20 miles north and south and spans 65 miles wide. It has landscapes that are sometimes thick with thriving forest, which can be quite beautiful. And those same landscapes, during periods of fog or at night, can also be quite scary. Surrounding these forests are barns and farmland, often consisting of grassy fields that look like something you might see in Kansas or Iowa. you can see for miles and miles away. That is, if you don't happen to have a rolling hill or a cliff obscuring you. It seems so far away from the populated areas. Were farms not plentiful in that region? It might be easy to be swallowed up by those forests when you cross them. Swallowed up forever, where you'll never find your way out. Through that landscape, highways run like scars, and other, smaller roads, sometimes spooky back roads, among them. Jason Voorhees would be quite comfortable in this area. So would the mob, when they're disposing of bodies. Or pretty much any serial killer for that matter. Ted Bundy would have loved this place. Because it's very hard to find the bodies. Anything anybody leaves there is likely going to be picked apart within a few days by scavengers. It's a serial killer's locker. Now, after a series of fumbles that the Canadian police force committed that were so egregious it's horrifying, this Canadian officer came out acknowledging that there's a murderer on the loose, and I'll talk about the fumbles in a second. You can hear this guy at the end of the video, though he mostly just describes in less detail what I already explained, without updates since this video is old. And this is just him reiterating where they drove.
We believe that rather than driving into the city of Edmonton, the male drove south and east of Nisku into rural Leduc County.
August 18th, 2010, sometime after 7:30 to 8, Amber called her brother, who was in prison. She had left her suitcase in the motel, and since we don't exactly know what happened, she might have technically still been alive by the 20th. Though it's unlikely, it's possible. When she didn't return back to the motel, her mother called the police. Now, it's a myth you aren't supposed to contact a person within 24 hours after they go missing. That's actually when you should call them. Actually, you should call them within 72 hours. That's when criminologists have identified the most crucial period to solving an abduction. First, they're still most likely to be alive, and if they aren't, the killer's still most likely to have the body. He's more likely to be in the area. People's memories are more solid at that point. The longer you go, your brain starts to forget crucial details, and confabulation sets in. It's when your brain starts making up memories. So it was the 20th. Just a little over 24 hours when Mom contacted the Canadian police. Her daughter wouldn't just leave her 17-month-old son with a friend that long. Now, I'm neither anti nor pro-cop. Just like everything else, it all depends on the individual. I know some highly intelligent and dedicated detectives with minimal, if any, prejudices. I also know police tend to have a very diverse range of talent, and that includes officers who have no talent, are bullies, racist, and dumb, and other officers who are smart, highly intelligent, hardworking, dedicated, and good-natured. Now, what Amber and her mom needed during this crucial period was a John Douglas or even an Andy Griffith. What she instead got was a Barney Fife and a Gomer Pyle. Except that might be giving them too much credit. Barney and Gomer at least gave a shit about the victim, even if they weren't very good at their jobs. And without knowing anything about Amber, they just presumed she was some girl who was out there still drinking and having fun, and dismissed the mom's concern. Finally, after that 72-hour period, an investigation began. Well, sort of. Amber was put into a missing persons files. The police couldn't be bothered to keep track of her suitcase in her motel, and that was eventually thrown out. And within a month, even though Amber hadn't been found yet, and by now there was strong evidence of foul play, Amber was removed from the missing persons files. It took her mom another month to have Amber designated as a missing person again. Good luck finding her now. So the mother, enraged at this point, and her brother as well, filed a complaint against the police, which takes about a year to investigate. Well, in their case, it took 4 years. All that was physically left of Amber was thrown into the garbage, her suitcase, which was exactly how the police treated her. I hope to God they sued and won millions over that. For some reason, I doubt it, though. I don't know a lot about Canadian tort law. Now, you're probably wondering about the phone call and her brother corroborating his missing sister being taken by this strange man. Well, that's completely unclear what happened there. The cell phone recording was released 2 years after her murder. Not sure why it took so long. Remember, the recording's coming from the prison end. They didn't find her cell phone, to my understanding. Now, Amber's remains themselves were found 4 days after the phone call information was released on September 1st. Some horseback riders were riding along pasture, somebody else's property, and they spotted Amber's skull somewhere among the forest and grass, not too many miles from where she had stayed at her hotel. It was like 14 miles, but I'd have to check. The remains were definitely identified by whatever forensic means. It was definitely Amber. That's all that was ever found of her body. The rest was taken by scavengers off into oblivion. At this point, detectives in charge that seemed more competent and professional came in after public pressure and evidence began showing up that showed there's a pattern of serial killing going on in that area. At least 4 other women's remains were found not too far from Amber. The case was handled so badly that the Canadian Police Force publicly acknowledged the investigation was deficient, which was just a formal way of saying we fucked up.
Is Staff Sergeant Gerard McNeil, that's Gerard Macneil. I'm the unit commander at CARE. I bring you here today, and I thank you very much for coming. The RCMP confirmed today the human remains found on a rural property near Leduc, Alberta on Saturday, September 1st, 2012 are those of Amber Alyssa Tuccaro, who has been the subject of an RCMP missing person investigation since her disappearance in August 2010. A group of recreational horseback riders came upon what they believed to be a human skull and immediately contacted the RCMP at Leduc. Over the weekend, the remains were identified through dental records, and with the assistance of the Edmonton Medical Examiner's Office and RCMP Forensic Identification Services, CARE investigators became involved. We consider the circumstances surrounding Amber Tuccaro's death to be suspicious. A ground search of the area where her remains were found is underway and is expected to be completed within 48 hours. The CARE investigation into Amber Tuccaro's disappearance continues. This is very sad news for the Tuccaro family, and our thoughts are with them. This discovery brings us closer to finding out what happened to Amber. Amber Tuccaro, a resident of Fort McMurray, Alberta, was visiting the Edmonton area when she was last seen in the early evening hours of August 18, 2010 in Leduc County, Alberta. She was 5 foot 6 inches tall and had brown eyes. At the time of her disappearance, she was only 20 years old and weighed 144 pounds. Had black hair with blonde streaks and may have been wearing a purple bench brand hoodie. On August 28th this year, CARE investigators asked for the public's help in identifying the voice of a person of interest in this case and released a voice recording taken from a cell phone conversation between Amber and the person she was with in the vehicle, an unknown male, on the night she disappeared. Investigators believe the male voice on the tape belongs to someone who could assist us in our investigation. The recording, which runs approximately 2 minutes, is now available to the public online at www.careca or www.albertamissingpersonsoneword.ca. There is no connection between the latest discovery and the audio tape we released last week. However, the RCMP is extremely grateful for the help we have received from the public in response to the tape. Anyone who has information related to the Amber's disappearance is asked to call the RCMP CARE Unit toll-free at 1-877-412-CARE, that's 5273, or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS. Thank you. Take a few questions. I would describe it as an exceptional response. The websites that I mentioned received over 8,000 hits in a 24-hour period following the release, and from that we've received a substantial number of tips.
Are we getting closer to finding out who this guy is?
It's hard to say. I believe that these tips need to be fully investigated by our people, but we are hopeful with the response we've received, and we remain optimistic.
Can you see?
No connection between the discovery here and that lead you here?
No, it did not.
What did lead you here, if you can say?
Yes, a group of people were here horseback riding, and they were on the trails near here, and they looked down and they appeared to see human remains. It was in fact a skull their residence and immediately contacted the RCMP at Leduc.
Can you tell us whose property we're on right now?
I cannot.
Were the remains in a close area?
Yes, it is.
Were the remains confined in a close area, or were they sort of scattered apart?
As you can see in the background, the search is underway right now. So I can say that more remains have been found, but I can't answer the question.
Had this area been searched before?
We have conducted searches in Leduc County prior to this, but I'm not prepared to say where those searches were conducted.
Any way to tell how long it's been?
That's for the ME, and I won't be commenting on that.
Was it dental records that were able to the ME to identify?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. How would you describe the area that we're in here? Is this a secluded spot? Is it heavily wooded, or?
I would suggest to you that this is very typical for the Alberta landscape. It's obviously farm property with wooded areas along the perimeters of the property.
How many people are on scene right now searching?
I don't have an exact number, but I'd estimate there's 40 people on the scene.
No RCMP members?
All RCMP right now. We have had civilian volunteers in here since the initial discovery, including the dog teams as well as civilian search and rescue.
Sorry, I may have missed it. When were the remains found?
On Saturday.
Saturday. Afternoon, morning, night?
Afternoon.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, this might be just maybe misunderstanding something. You talked about remains. Is there a chance that there's more than one victim here?
We're not investigating more than one victim. We've only found the remains of one person.
Did the RCP have any clue as to who this man is on this recording? Do you have your suspicions?
No, we only have what, we have the voice, and we have tips coming in. People, as you can imagine, are imagining that it may be someone they know, and we have to investigate that.
Is he still a person of interest, not a suspect? Or?
He's still a person of interest, yes.
Two more questions.
The conditions of the remains, can you comment at all on them, or if they've been bothered by, I guess, environmental factors or anything like that?
I'm sorry, I won't comment on that.
And one final question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This led to some vague policy procedure reforms, and I'm sure there were changes. I just don't know what they were, since there was a lot of public outrage. However, whatever these changes were, obviously they were a little bit too late for the family. They're not going to want an apology now. Amber was found in 2012 in a wooden area east of Luddick near Range Road 241 and Highway 623. I've never been up there, so I don't know these areas. Usually killers don't just kill one person, dump them somewhere who was totally random, and that's that. Usually they're serial killers and they'll do it more than once. Other potential victims by this guy include the following. The skull of Dolores Browers was east of Luddick in a wooden area along Range Road 241 near Raleigh Road. She had been hitchhiking. That was in May of 2000. Edna Bernard was found in 2002 in a wooden area on Range Road 245 just north of Raleigh. And Katie Ballantyne was found in 2003 in a farmer's field near Range Road 235 north of Township Road 500. This killer seems to possess patience and method. He knows the area and he waits to pick out his victims. This makes him particularly disturbing in a place where women hitchhiking is so common. He undoubtedly has an antisocial personality disorder, is arrogant, he's not psychotic. That means that he wouldn't know right from wrong. This guy knows right from wrong. He just doesn't care. And he has high levels of sociopathy or psychopathy. Obviously, he hates women. Now, for the rest of the story. Upon releasing the voice recording, the police were inundated with tips, and it's clear they aren't sharing all the evidence. But no arrests have been made nevertheless. One suspect that was looked into was a ranch owner named Pat Carson. Pat apparently is a sex offender who has a long history of sexual assaults. He's been in prison for it, and he's been accused recently of luring young women to his property and then trying to have sex with them. He lives in the area. Several women came forward after hearing that voice and said it's Pat, they're sure of it, they're utterly confident. Others contradicted their statements and said he doesn't sound anything like that guy, and that he might be a sicko, but that's not him. He was ruled out as a suspect by the police, Although they didn't say why, they seem very confident it's not him either. This caused some outrage and controversy. Now, Pat's at least in his 60s by now, and he is considered a high-risk offender, but I don't think it's him either. If this were a mystery novel, I'd say he's the red herring. If you listen to the killer's voice, he sounds like he's somewhere between his late 20s to 40s.
They're north of Beaumont. We're going, yes, to 50th Street. Absolutely. 50th Street. 50th Street. We're just heading south of Beaumont. They're north of Beaumont. We're going, yes.
Yeah, it's highly unlikely that voice comes from the elderly guy above. I'd like to hear them next to each other, but I'm confident enough to wager money that they don't sound alike. People get confirmation bias due to bad experiences or spurious conclusions, and nothing can change their mind. I'll tell you right now, my mind could change if I heard them next to each other and they sounded alike. I just don't think it's likely. You can see hysteria and confirmation bias from the guy above if you're watching the video portion. The first guy said he spent years at Pat's ranch, and he doesn't think their voices match at all. The person who disagreed with him, who's sure it's Pat, replies with bad spelling and grammar, "Bullshit, it sounds like you're Pat himself or someone helping him," in an accusatory way. Okay, that's why we can't have good things and why the cops don't release evidence, because it creates these lynch mobs and that kind of mentality. That's a very big conjecture. You can think Pat's a sicko and dangerous, and still not think he's this serial killer. Although there's only a small number of serial killers out there, that number is misleading. You see, you aren't likely to ever live next door to one, but highways, or regular roads for that matter, particularly in remote areas like the ones where vulnerable hitchhikers go, draw serial killers like flies feasting on a picnic. There, your odds substantially increase, to the point it's extremely dangerous. I realize there are people out there with few resources, but any option is better than being strangled or mutilated by some freak who didn't feel as if his mom loved him enough. So don't hitchhike, particularly if you're a female. Trust me, you don't want me talking about your story on here someday. This world can be a dark place. There are things that can happen to you that are a lot worse than death. Hell is right here, and its demons are the memories of good times feasting on those that are suffering. One of the only faint mitigations when this happens comes from justice. The dead can't fight for themselves. That's a responsibility for the living. Anybody who recognizes that voice should call 1-877-4-125-273 or send an email at the addresses I provided, and you might help catch a serial killer.
I'm RCMP Constable Ray Shelton. I'm an investigator with CARE, which is mandated with investigating unsolved homicides and vulnerable missing persons. Right now, we're asking for the public's assistance, your assistance, in solving one such investigation. This is the missing persons case of Amber Tuccaro, a 21-year-old female who went missing in August of 2010. On August 17, 2010, Amber flew from Fort McMurray to Edmonton with her female friend and Amber's 14-month-old son. After arriving at Edmonton International Airport, the three booked into a motel room here in Nisku and spent the night. In the early evening of August 18, 2010, Amber left the hotel room to find a ride into the city of Edmonton. We know that between 7:30 and 8 o'clock p.m., Amber got into a vehicle with an unknown male. While in that vehicle, Amber received a phone call, and through investigative means, we have obtained a recording of that phone call. That recording includes the voice of the unknown male driver of the vehicle. To date, that individual is unidentified. We're asking the public's assistance to listen to the tape in hopes that someone recognizes the male voice of the driver and phones investigators with that information. This audio clip may be disturbing to some listeners, but it's important that the public listens to the voice and helps investigators identify the driver of that vehicle. In the following audio recording, you will hear two voices, that of Amber Tuccaro and the unknown male driver of the vehicle.
Where are we by?
We're just heading south of Beaumont, or north of Beaumont.
We're heading north of Beaumont. Yo, where are we going? No, this is a... Are you fucking kidding me? You better not take me anywhere I don't want to go. I want to go into the city. Jeez. Yo, we're not going into the city, are we? No, we're not.
Yes.
Then what are these roads going to?
50th Street.
50th Street. Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Yo, where are we going?
50th Street.
50th Street.
50th Street.
East, right?
East.
Over town.
Travel.
We believe that rather than driving into the city of Edmonton, the male drove south and east of Nisku into rural Leduc County. And subsequent to this phone conversation ending, no one has seen or heard from Amber. We believe the male driver of this vehicle has information that may assist police in finding Amber. You will now hear the audio clip a second time. Please listen carefully, and if you believe you recognize the voice of this male driver, please call investigators with that information.
We're just heading south of Beaumont, or north of Beaumont. We're going, yes, to 50th Street. Absolutely. 50th Street. 50th Street. East. We're just heading south of Beaumont, or north of Beaumont. We're going, yes, to 50th Street. Absolutely. 50th Street. 50th Street. East.
This recording is available at the CARE website at kare.ca and also at the Alberta